Hey, JD here with Weekend Publisher. And what I want to talk about today is what are the common elements of the best selling books? Now, I've worked with a lot of self published authors, and there's really a lot of things in common with the books that do best versus the books that don't really find their legs. Um, we were talking about this in one of my mastermind groups called the Heartbeats. And this was one of the topics of the week. And I gave it a lot of thought, looking over, because I've worked with over 300 self published authors now, spoken to over 1,000, I live and breathe marketing and self publishing books. Looked on Amazon a ton. And it really comes down to five things that are in common with the best-selling books, and that could be summed up with the acronym PAGES, P-A-G-E-S. So we'll break down each of those one by one. So PAGES, or P. P is for packaging. So when I'm talking about packaging, I'm really talking about like the first impression that your book is giving. So the cover, the title, and the blurb. Those are the biggest things, the initial thing that somebody's going to see. So the biggest things that I see with packaging, or the biggest mistakes that I see with packaging, is a cover. First of all, the cover that just doesn't match the book. Like as an extreme example, you have a picture of a guy with, no shirt on, and it really looks like a romance, but the book is a thriller, right? Like that's an extreme example. Another one is just going like way too far off the beaten path. You know, us as creatives, it's very easy for us to be like, oh, I want to like really throw my own twist on it. But the thing is that readers, when they initially look at it, because people's attention span is like very, very small when they're looking at books online, you really need that book to stand out. Like this is a sci-fi thriller. This is a first contact. This is an epic fantasy. It needs to scream it, matching the expectations of what people are seeing today, not like in the 80s or the 90s, but it really, really needs to scream because, well, I don't want to get too far off tangent here because I want to get to the rest of the acronym there. But we're paying for each click, especially with Amazon ads, and with Facebook ads, we're paying for impressions. But regardless, each click that we want them to be the most qualified people possible clicking on it. To get that, we want to set the right expectations. So the cover, the main purpose is to get people to click on your book and to set the right expectations in terms of genre, but also in terms of quality. The other part of packaging is the blurb. And the biggest mistake I see with this is the blurb is not emotional enough. Now, I have a 4-layer blurb workshop. If you go down below, actually, I have a profitable author blueprint, and I'm fairly certain I'm offering the 4-level blurb workshop on in that. The biggest thing is the emotional hook, because people don't buy. A lot of people wrongly assume that we're selling a book, and we're technically, yes, we are selling a book, but what we're really selling is the emotional impact that people will have when they buy the book. So the blurb is extraordinarily important. The title, I don't want to get too much into that, but that is fairly, you want to set expectations as well in terms of the title. So that's the P, packaging. Second, the A is alignment. Now, I could talk about this for a long time, but again, this is sort of like the cover, but with the entire book, right? Where we want to throw our own spin on it, but sometimes when we throw our own spin on it, it can go so far out in left field that it might be sort of like really unique and not like what people expect. Like that's a bigger risk, something like that. But if you go through something like, hey, I'm writing let's say a romance, right? Enemies to lovers romance. There are certain like tropes that each of those books tend to have. And if you work within those tropes and you throw your own little spin on each of those are the books that tend to do best. But if it's like, a lot of authors, when they come up to me and they say, hey, I have a book that nobody Is so unique that nobody has ever read anything like this before. And that's totally cool. But I don't know how to sell it. I don't know who is it for, right? What's the audience for this? But if you have a book with already an audience for it, it becomes much easier to sell, much more commercially versus the artistic side of it. So there's two different things. There's the commercial aspect of it, and then there's the artistic side of it, and you want to balance out the two, certainly. Um, so that's with alignment. Um, Grip. How much does the first 3,000 words, the first paragraph, the first sentence in your book grip those potential readers? And like in our day and age right now, like people's attention spans are low. It's a lot of fantasy authors, especially the one against like the world building or some other genres. They go like too heavy into the dialogue, and it's all dialogue or all world building, and it's not hooking people in enough. We really want from the first 3,000 the words, the first paragraph, the first sentence to really hook them in. And the books that do best have that in mind. Now that we don't get too much into the marketing, because a lot of authors are like, well, I've already written the book. I'm not going back and changing, the first chapter. I'm not, or some do. But that really gets into like sort of the developmental editing thing and gets into a whole thing. It's not something that we try at first. We try and, do the packaging, certainly the packaging, and then what's coming next is the engine. So G was grip, E is engine. So this is your marketing engine. So what are we doing to market it? Are we just posting on social media and crossing our fingers and hoping somebody will find it someday? Or do we have an actual system in place? So do we have promotions? Are we running ads in a very specific way at a very specific ratio? Are we looking at the ads? How are they performing? Are we using Amazon attribution links? All that stuff. That's a whole other thing that I absolutely love that I could just go on for hours and hours and hours about. But E is engine, the marketing engine. How well is that running, and how committed are we to checking in on it, making adjustments, and so on. And the last one, which is probably the most important one in the P.A.G.E.S acronym, is stamina. So to be honest, the success with book marketing, to market your book, has, we did talk about alignment and grip and so on, but all of that can be fixed if you have stamina, persistence, you're willing to test. That is actually not probably, it is actually more important than the book itself, is you as an author. How much do you want it? A lot of authors want to be able to do full time. Some authors think, treat a book like a lottery ticket. Like, hey, if this takes off, then, I'll be on a beach for the rest of my life. That almost never happens. I like to say all the time, success isn't instant, but success is inevitable if you have the right system. And with the right system also comes the right mindset. Being persistent. Are you thinking, hey, if this one book takes off, that's great. If it doesn't take off, I'm done writing. Is it sort of a hobby? Is it sort of like just on your bucket list? And, for a lot of authors, that's totally fine too. But a lot of authors also have more aspirational intentions, like in terms of being able to write full time. Maybe they've written, for a long time. This is their first book. But yes, stamina, persistence, that is actually more important than your book. It's more important than anything, is your mindset going into it. So again, those are the 5 things. Even if you have all 5, will the book take off? It's much more likely. I can never guarantee that a book will take off. Even traditional publishers get it wrong most of the time. And that's what they do for a living, is vet books to see which ones are going to take off. But if you do have that stamina, that persistence, what you do is, when you have packaging, when you have alignment, when you have grip, when you have the engine and then you have the stamina to test it all and put it into a system, see how it does. Does it take off? Some books will take off right away. Some books will take off slower. Regardless, if that book takes off or not, it's still going to be part of your backlist. It's not like the book is like dead on arrival or it's totally done. Like nobody's ever going to read it. I'm just going to like take it off of Amazon and burn all the copies. No. Even if it doesn't take off right away, you could work on the next book and take what you learned about promoting and writing that first book into your next book, and apply it that way. So even if that book doesn't take off, doesn't mean that it's lost. I'll just give you one example. I have one author who started working with me directly to do some advertising, and he had 4 trilogies, and one of the trilogy just took off, and one of the trilogies just bombed. And he said to me, "Yeah, I know that one wasn't. It was epic fantasy and it had dragons, but it wasn't really." Up to the expectations in terms of tropes, and it was a little bit out there. It still gets sales because what he does have is that one trilogy, or you can even do it with one book. The good thing is that you just need one book that takes off. That's all you need is one book that takes off, and that gets people into your system. They could follow you on Amazon. You can capture their email address. It becomes extraordinarily exciting once you have all this stuff lined up and it's taken off. Okay. That's enough for this video. I'm going to be coming out with more videos as well. Down below, I'll link to the Profitable Author Blueprint. Take a look at that 60-minute workshop that I did. It was very well attended, lots of questions, and it really goes into the system in much more depth. Until next time, I'll see you.